For Watcher of Realms' first ever collab, we are getting Dracula, which I've already talked extensively about for a couple videos. Now, if you've seen any of my testing, you will know that despite my testing not being perfect, every single one of these guys, except for one, is pretty mediocre, which is really unfortunate. These guys have some very in-depth, very complicated, and very unique and interesting kits, and I really want them to be good. I don't want them to be power creep, but I want them to have a place in the game. And I know that everyone else does too, right? Because currently, these are all skips, pretty much. Now, the thing is, there are some solutions for this. These guys could be good with some very minor tweaks, so that is what this video is going to be about. This video is going to be about two things. Number one is I want to identify the problems in these kits. I want to show you guys not only what these guys are good at, not only what they can be used for, but I also want to show you guys where the kits fall and where they need to be fixed. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to talk about some bonus, like, hey, these are good parts of these kits. These are parts I like. These are parts that are unique. These are parts that should be there. And then I'm going to identify the things that they fall off on and the reasons why they are not exceptional. And then I'm going to provide some solutions to put them at the level that they should be without making them overpowered. This is the first collab this game has ever seen, and we absolutely want to have some usable units, right? They don't need to be broken. You know, these guys are coming way sooner than they should, but they need to be good. Okay, so that's what this video is going to be about. Now, the first unit I do want to talk about is Lady Mina. This was the biggest disappointment for me personally, and let me explain why. So Lady Mina on paper is probably the most obviously good by her kit. She has a little bit weird factions with Piercer and Northerner, but that's manageable. And when you go into the kit, there's a lot of positives here that are very unique. She has a couple things. She has Blood Sigil, which is on basic attacks. Every 5 basic attacks, she does it but AoE, putting Blood Sigil out, which is her unique debuff, as well as 50% slow. That on paper is very good. That's like Mari, right? Then we go over and we can see that she actually doesn't have a lot of attacks. She has 2,300, but that's not a problem because she gains 50% of the current attack of the highest attack ally on the field. So if you use an Ardea who has 30,000 HP, Lady Mina actually gets 15,000 HP, which is very good. And not only that, she increases their damage by 30%, which is really good. She also gains 20% of their current crit damage if she's bonded. That's amazing, right? And it makes her ultimate stronger, which makes it do more damage. Now this thing is going to do a ring. It's going to immobilize, which is really cool. She's like one of the only frequent immobilizers in this game. And then she does actual damage, right? That's all very cool, right? But she has some very glaring flaws. So the first thing I want to talk about is her basic attack. Her basic attack puts out slows, and every 5 hits she's going to do it, but AoE, which on paper is really good, right? It's like Mari. Well, single target slows is not very good. So what we're going to do here is, as you can see, she's going to target. She's going to do an AoE, which is very cool. And then she's going to do single target. And look at what's happening. There's only 3 targets. Occasionally, she's going to slow them all. And then she's going to proceed to not slow them. And then they just walk through. That's a big issue there. All right. Her slows are inconsistent. Not only that, her ultimate also doesn't do frequent damage. So the next wave is going to come out here. And we're going to click her ult. So this on paper, if we put down an Ardea somewhere, is going to make her deal a lot of damage because it's going to inherit all of Ardea's damage, and it's also going to immobilize. But if you read between the lines, this is a 10-second ultimate, and he does damage 1 time every 2 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is it. That is all the damage that she ever does, which really sucks because her ultimate costs 900 which is pretty high for something that barely lasts, barely does damage, and despite her getting 20 extra rage every 5 basic attacks, if you look at her attack interval, that's not going to be the fastest ultimate generation ever. It does come back, but it's such a small amount of damage. But there are actually two things that she does quite well. So the first thing is, in guild versus guild, she may have some usage with her immobilize. Now her immobilize is kind of bad on paper for guild versus guild, because when your demon soldier already gets to the tank, which is very easy because the ultimate's very quick, it makes it so that it just keeps it on the tank. But if you pair it with a Valara who's super meta, what it does is it actually makes it push the immobilized Chomper away, which is really nice. So what you can see here, hopefully it doesn't die, is when she ults, she's going to immobilize him, which is good, right? It's gonna hold him in place. Now, we're still gonna deal damage, but the second he gets knocked back, he's going to continue to be stuck. That is a good use. Also, with a Piercer Lord, she does also get this type of range, which goes a bit further. So I could technically put her on this tile and she would hit in front of the tank, but then her ult wouldn't trigger without her A1, so. And her other major use is actually Matrix. She does a lot of damage in Matrix. Because she can take Ardea, who's super meta, used in most of the teams, she can take her attack, and the enemies are actually counted as flying, so piercing damage does more, which is great, right? She could do between 600 and 1.2 million damage, which is huge. And another thing is, she's really dependent on her awakenings. One of the biggest issues, I said, is that her slows are single target. Well, they're not on her A3. It makes it target 3 people instead, which is huge, but it's an A3 awakening on a limited. And it's a unit that already doesn't really have the greatest slows, that you're not really going to use her very much anyways. So not only that, her A5 also reads well, 20% increased attack, permanently pretty much. But you want to know where her base attack is? 2,300. That's like 300 extra attack for a limited A5, which is insane. An insane requirement for almost nothing, right? Like, sure, I'm happy that no one will need to get her to A5. But the fact that most of her attack comes from other people and this does nothing is really bad. So she's dependent on awakenings. But her awakenings are bad. Like, it's just really weird. So what have we learned? We have learned that her slows are infrequent, they only target one person, and when they do actually go AoE, it doesn't do much. Her buffing's really cool. The fact that she takes attack from allies is super cool. I think she needs to have more of a role in damaging, with a little bit of a hybrid with some supporting. So what I propose is this. I think this basic attack should target 3 peoples off of the base copy. No awakenings needed. And to change the A3, they should just make the A3 make the slows AoE. Make it target 5 people. Make it target friggin' 8 people. I don't care. It's a limited. It's supposed to be a little bit stronger, right? It doesn't need to be full meta, but she should target more than one person. Not only that, her ultimate is a really big miss, in my opinion. This ultimate's really cool. That Immobilize is really sick. The fact that she inflicts her debuff and does some good damage that scales off of other attackers is really good on paper. But the 10 seconds and the arbitrary restriction of every 2 seconds, I could build her with 900 attack speed and she would still hit once every 2 seconds of the ultimate. I propose this. I propose to extend the ultimate to 20 seconds. The immobilized state might be a problem, but just make the immobilized state last for 10 seconds, and then make the other 10 seconds continued damage. Not only that, remove this every 2 seconds. Just remove it. Make it scale off of her attack speed and her attack interval. So it's like every 1 second, approximately, if she's built well. Then what you can do is you could have her be used in areas like Matrix, right? Matrix physical is a very difficult thing, and we need solutions. So why not make Mina a physical Demi, right? And in Matrix, she doesn't do damage on her basics. Her slows are too inconsistent. You can't really use her on either side because when she does actually do damage, you gotta wait for a long period. So I think that would go a long way into making her better, making her kind of like a pseudo Mari, pseudo buffer Demi that scales off of her allies. A DPS that actually does good damage that scales off of someone else is a really, really cool mechanic. I mean, Praetus, Ardea, you know, even stuff like Lady Alex or Ivar, whatever, all have high attack, and you can use her with them, and it would be a really, really cool mechanic. But she just doesn't do damage frequently enough. 5 instances of damage for an expensive Assault that does immobilize, which is not the worst, but like doesn't really add too much, is just not good for a limited. It's just not. Like, she's bad at slowing, she's bad at damage, her buffing is cool and good, but it only affects one person. What's even the point, right? I think they make her more of a physical Demi that has a couple other things going for her. Also, quick side note from editing Destined, this would also actually make her meta in anti-air at A1. She may target everything, I'm not 100% sure, but that would be another use, because, I mean, the Lara Arbiter teams are dominating Arena. Because she's Piercer, maybe she would be able to take some of that back to the Piercers, which would be an amazing change as well. Now, the second hero that needs to be buffed is Vlad Draculea. Draculea, whatever you call it. I'm going to call him Vlad Dracula. This guy is the new tactician, and he's really interesting on paper, especially because I think he's going to be given for free, but he's probably the worst out of the batch. Now, if we look into his kit, you're going to see one big thing that causes a problem. Damage scales off of HP. The only decent damage dealer in this game that scales off of HP is Malvira, and no one uses Malvira just for damage. It's just the damage is a nice side thing, which is fine for Malvira, because Malvira is not trying to be a DPS. All of her kit does damage reducing effects, right? And then she does damage on the side, which makes her a good tank that does damage. So Malvira is good, right? Now, what happens if you take all of that damage reduction, all of that tanking, and you make a tanky unit with only offensive capabilities? But the kicker is you make them scale off of HP, which on paper is good, but the calculations in this game are really bad. So let's go over the kit really quickly. He has this, War Frenzy. This makes his opponents attack faster. This does not make them attack slower or make him attack faster or anything. I read it wrong the first time because I thought they would not do this. But he literally buffs your enemies so he can take damage more often, which is crazy. Now on paper, it does combo well with the fact that if he gets hit by those people, he heals 3% of his HP. What happens when those enemies start hitting for 50% of his HP? He's just gonna buff them and take more damage and then crumple like a bunch of paper. And then the thing I said about Malvira, you know, Malvira is a tank that can also do damage. This guy is a damage dealer who's kind of a tank. So 30% defense ignore. He has a counterattack. When he gets hit, he hits back, right? Which obviously should pair well with the War Frenzy and should be really unique and interesting, but it just doesn't work because he doesn't do damage. Even his movement ability, which is very cool because he's a tactician move, and it's very, very interesting. It's just, he doesn't do damage, is the honest truth. For example, with the damage, this is a level 3 green Malrecall, and he's doing about 40k. Now, of course, he does do more in his ultimate, and he's not at full soulbound stacks. But even with the other sets, this is about where his damage caps out. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. So he does really low damage, which is really unfortunate. Even with taking your guys' suggestions to put some soulbound with some HP and some crit damage, his damage is even less than the HP set, and I just can't really find a use for him. The thing is, his damage is too low to justify the fact that he's not really tanky enough for a lot of things, and I just don't see a place for him. So there's two ways that you can fix it. The thing I don't think they should do is Malvira. Malvira has a bunch of damage reduction, but she also kinda does damage. They could just neuter him, make him a movable tactician tank, which would be pretty cool, and make him just damage reduction. Don't even make him do damage, right? That would be pretty cool. We don't have any of those. But the thing is, by his design, by the lore, by everything, he should do damage. So what I propose is they literally just double his damage. He's a free unit. He doesn't need to be the most overpowered. Literally just add a little thing down here that says, Vlad does double damage to things with War Frenzy, or just anything, right? And he just does, instead of 80k hits, he does 160. Automatically gives him a use as a tanky DPS. The issue is with the damage scales off of HP, it just never ends well. I mean, his entire kit is to dedicate him to doing damage while kind of tanking. And while this is good for areas where he's getting hit by a bunch of little enemies that are just tickling him, and he could heal them up on his own without a healer, which is very cool, the issue is, nowhere you need a tank is going to have that. So they just need to increase his damage, and then he'll have a niche as a damage dealing tanky unit. He just does way too little in his current state. And the only place really for him is potentially Hellfire Emperor. 6 block, he can be at the front and then move him down later. It's pretty cool, but he's still, not going to do much anywhere else. And now we get to the Ancient exclusive, and the last one that, in my opinion, needs to be buffed. Count Dracula. Going into this is probably the best one of these three. But for an Ancient exclusive, he should be. And he needs to be better. There's a couple of things you need to know about going into this. First of all, his attack interval is literally more than double the longest in the game. At least I am pretty sure. This thing is 10 seconds long. So even with cracked out, insane gear, at least for most people's standards, you're going to be able to get him to like a 5-second interval. And if you look at his kit, his basic attack is actually quite interesting. He, instead of actually launching basic attacks himself, has no range. He actually assists your allies. So let's say you have an Idril or you have a Lady A, and you have them attack. Well, because they did a basic attack, he's going to attack with them, which is very cool. So he can hit anywhere on the map. He could be on one lane while the other people are on the other lane, and he will do damage. The kicker is this is a 10-second attack interval, so 5 seconds if you have him built well, and he will deal 200,000 damage a hit every 5 seconds. That is abysmal. It is very, very little damage. And if you look into his kit, he has a lot of things that are very interesting. He gains stacks of Soul Siphon, which increases his damage. When you place him around allies, he gains penetration. And what if all of this do? It makes his 200,000 do like 300,000, which doesn't matter because he attacks so infrequently and he's so useless with his basic attacks. So because of his lack of damage, he has two other things going for him. One of them is Soul Rot. Now this is where I think he had the most potential to be interesting. He puts Soul Rot on 2 different allies. The highest attack. And what it does is it kills them rapidly. It makes them really low. It won't outright kill them, but it does lower their HP. And it gives them 15% damage increase. It is a 30% damage increase, which is pretty good. But it's not like a crazy amount of damage increase, considering he's literally killing them. And then the other thing is his ultimate does damage, and it does anti-heal. Frequent anti-heal. It is single target, the first instance of single target anti-healing, but that's very interesting. And in my opinion, he has 2 uses. The first area where he's pretty good is GVG. I say pretty because I don't think he'll be like meta or anything in his current state, but he puts 15% damage increase, 30% when A1 on 2 units, which could be, you know, like a Lady A, an Iovar, could be a Valara, something. And then his ultimate's actually quite good as well. So if we're able to burst down this Chomper fast enough, which we should be able to, the Chomper will try to heal and get anti-healed, and it will not be able to heal. This is really important for countering the Grotesque Fiend. Not only that, he also goes through shields, and you want to know who's really important with shields? Well, the Fool. So he goes through the Fool's shields as well. Now, I don't know if the Fool can even get there. Yes, it can. Right there, the shield was on, and he killed it anyways. That's really good, okay? Not only that, his range is very large, so that is very hype as well, and he can target from anywhere on the map. So his range will allow him certain unique placements, like I could even put him up here, although it wouldn't buff Valara, so it wouldn't really work as well. Basically, he has some GVG viability. And the other area, we're going to have to take a look at Banana Look's channel. Shout out Banana Look. I will link him in the description or the comment or something. He's a great creator. Honestly, his test video on Dracula was so much better than mine. I will not sugarcoat it. This thing is amazing, right? And he actually found a use for Dracula in single target. Because of his low cost, due to his less cost in arena, he can place him pretty early, and Dracula's range actually goes like all the way. So what does that mean? Well, that means you can ult with him and it will actually kill things very fast. Now the issues do start to show a little bit later, but for now we can just see this ult coming out, dealing a decent amount of damage. He actually does good damage in his ult, and it targets immediately. Not only that, he's able to increase the damage of Valderon a little bit more, which is cool. Unfortunately, the issues with this is he actually cannot be healed in his ultimate, and currently he actually does take the healing from other units. So units will try to heal him and he can't be healed at all. So he actually takes the healing from other allies. That's something that needs to be changed. And also, Soul Rot can affect his allies that don't want to be affected by the damage increase, such as tanks and healers. So that's pretty rough. So what have we learned? We've learned that his attack interval is insane. His basic attacks do no damage. His ultimate does some damage, but it comes with some issues with interactions. And his buffing is really low for the amount of pain that it causes your allies. So what do we do to make him better? Well, we don't want him to be Valara level, but we need him to be good. My idea is to make him more of a buffer than he is right now, right? Him doing bad basics can be manageable, but we need more buffing. I think he should be the first ever inspiration and damage increase hero. To my knowledge, there aren't any of those, except maybe Desomi counts, I don't remember. But either way, this could be 15% damage increase or even 30% damage increase, make the A1 like 50%, I don't know. And then make it also do inspiration. It could be like 10% inspiration or something. It could be really low, but he could be one of the first of that type. The thing is, this affects 2 people on placement. He doesn't buff that much. And then outside of his ultimate, he does no damage, which is really, really rough. So he only has those 2 uses. His single target use is somewhat limited because, you know, he can't be healed and he draws healing from other people. And then his GVG use, he just doesn't he just doesn't do anything but his ultimate, really, because his buffing is so little. I just think they should lean into him being more of a unique buffer and just maybe lower his interval a little bit. Also, if they're gonna keep the freaking can't be healed in ultimate form, I don't think they should keep the can't be healed in ultimate form. It's really hard to play around with. You can't use him in any boss content at all because he dies, and it just really limits his usability. Now, Van Helsing is actually good. He's very simple. Basically, he just does damage. He does some executes. He's really good in Matrix. He's really good in Geary 3. He will be amazing in Pelagios Codex. I think he's fine as is. I really like Dr. Van Helsing. He's the one that I think is the best, honestly, even though he is pretty simple compared to the others. I think he's fine the way he is. So what do we learn? Vlad, interesting. He's going to be a free unit. Doesn't need to be the most powerful. But what he does need is more damage. If he's going to be in this weird spot between damaging and tanking, where he doesn't do either very well, or at least not at the level you need, I mean, he needs more damage. Clearly they want him to be a DPS. Double his damage. It will not break the game at all. Maybe even give him more. Okay, maybe I will also do another Vlad testing video, because I didn't test him very well. But he really is bad. Then we get Mina. Mina should be more of a unique DPS that scales off of her allies. Currently, she doesn't slow well. She buffs decent, and then she doesn't attack well. It's 5 instances of damage over 10 seconds, and then you have to wait forever to do her damage again. It is really bad design. I'm just going to be honest. And all they have to do is remove this every 2 seconds. Just make it normal. Extend this. They could keep the mobilized state 10 seconds if they want. But they just need to make her do more damage for longer. That's all they have to do. Dracula, I think they need to lean more into the damage increase. Give him more damage increase. And also add like inspiration. Give him a little bit of a niche where he's a kind of DPS, which also buffs, but his buffs really impair his allies by lowering their HP. Currently, he can't be healed during his ult. If that stays, he continues to be irrelevant in boss content, unfortunately, because his only way of dealing damage makes it so he can't heal, so he just freaking dies. So they could remove that, or honestly leave it, and just try to upgrade his potential in other areas. Also, 10-second attack interval is insane. Make it like 5 seconds, and it's still insane, but it's manageable. These heroes are really cool, but they need a little bit more oomph, and then they would be good. Once again, they should not be strong enough where they power creep the game forever. But what they do need to do is have a place in the game. Vlad might make it onto 1 or 2 GVG teams. I don't foresee him being meta in single target arena, I'll be honest. And outside of that, I don't think he'll be a must-use anywhere as an ancient exclusive. Mina will be one of the worst limiteds in her current state. She doesn't do anything at a level that it should be. She just needs to do everything better, right? Make her target more people on her basic attack. Make her awakening a bit different, right? And then Vlad, he's cool, but he just needs to do more damage. That is it. There's a lot of potential. These heroes are super cool looking. I love the idea of the event, but please just buff them a little bit. Anyways, that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys, and I'll ship this over to the devs and just, you know, see what they'll say. They are very open to changing things. Keep in mind, this is early information and early kits, and they are always subject to change. So there is hope that these guys will get better. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Destined signing out.